What's up, everybody? This is Andy Morales, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Jam Sessions Live. My guest today is Edward Racey. How are you, brother?
Doing great. How about you, Andy?
Hey, I'm hanging in there, man. Just taking it one day at a time. You know, trying to get through
Absolutely.
the weather. Yeah, man. Because this weather, man, it's like one day it's cold, one day it's hot, then it's raining, then it's cold again. It's like Mother Nature can't make up their mind, I guess.
It wreaks havoc on your sinuses. I'm like that. Terrible. Every day it's different. And yeah. But a pleasure to
Word,
be here with
word.
you tonight.
Yes, I'm definitely honored to have you here, man, for real. So I
Thank you.
guess we just go right away. So tell me, how did this all start for you? How did poetry start for you?
Oh, well, writing started way back, I think as so many others when I was a child, just trying to, make sense of, as a teenager, trying to make sense of things that were happening to me and emotions that I was dealing with that I, wasn't quite, sure how to deal with, that I ended up, turning to writing to get these, these emotions, expressed and all that.
Okay, okay. So walk me through the process of your writing exactly. Like, is it one of those situations? Like, I'll tell you what. With me, my mind just randomly just starts rambling, and I just pick a piece of paper and just start writing. And sometimes I'm like, wait, where did this come from? Kind of thing. Like, how does that look like for you?
Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's that easy. You can just sit down, pick up the paper, get the computer, start typing, and it all goes smoothly. Other times I actually go back and use old-fashioned notebooks and, write in there and start from there and then touch it up, once I get into the computer. But yeah, the inspiration for me, sometimes it goes and comes in waves, and I just try to take advantage of it when it's hot, and the muse is a funny thing. So,
No, I definitely agree. Word. So when I would look back sometimes at, let's say, 2005, 2006, and now it's already 2022, and I'm like, wow, like, this is interesting how sometimes our writing changes over time, but it's interesting how we look back and we tell ourselves there, but this is where I was when I wrote this piece, or this is where I was when I had this random piece of paper on a napkin or something, just started writing stuff.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And I look back at stuff that I wrote, in early or late '90s, early '90s, and the theme seems to be the same. There's by far growth in the writing and how I've been able to grow as an artist, but the theme seems to stay the same. Even though I look back at those and I'm like almost can't make sense of what I was feeling. Like I'm almost like, man, it was like I was so young trying to make sense of these feelings, and the words don't quite translate like they do today. Like today, I can express it more clearly. Um, and it's so interesting to see that because I mean it's 30 something years of writing looking back on.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And it's very interesting too, right? Because I know, like there was a lot of things. I know for me there was things I would write about that I'm like, wait, no one really talks about this. And then when people talk about it now, it's like, whoa, like, hold up a second. I'm so, is it really that I'm not alone, kind of thing? Because let's be honest, at least when I was growing up, when you grew up in a Hispanic household, there's a lot of things that just wasn't talked about, or we weren't allowed
Right.
to talk about those things, or when we tried to discuss it with our parents, especially my parents, they it was all like, oh, it's just a phase. Or if you start expressing emotion, they're like, oh, be quiet, you don't know what you're talking about, you're fine, and it's not a big deal. So it's interesting that I look back to, like, I see the community today, and it's just like, wow, like, if only these things were addressed,
Hmm.
back then.
Hmm.
But I wonder, would it be different today, or would it still be the same as far as, like, how people react to things, if that makes sense?
No, right. No, I mean, we've definitely come far over the last 30 years and we've got so far to go, obviously, but I think people are waking up, and they realize that everybody's got something going on and you don't know what other people are dealing with and, just try to be respectful to everybody. Um, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. So how did you, like, as far as the like the poetry community and stuff like that, like, how did you find out about
Um, if you don't mind, I'll go back a little bit further. Um, I first, like you said, when we were writing when you were young, if we had like you said, if we had the community we had now, I wrote just for myself. I didn't share it with anybody else back then. Never expected to. It wasn't even a thought. It was just, you know, just for me. And if there was that community today, I don't know if things would have, I hope things would have been better. I might not have struggled as much because there is that comfort in knowing that there are people that relate. But going back to what you said, your answer, to ask your question here, the first poems I started sharing were on a website called Net Poets in like 1999.
Okay.
So there was it was like way back, and it was just, send them in and he would put them on the site. And so you can still see that site today, netpoets.com, for those who are interested. It's the founder passed away, but they're still carrying it on. So that was like the first time I shared. And then I kept writing on and off over the years. And then in like 2019, I met somebody at the flea market where I was working, and we got to talking, and she said, yeah, I'm a poet. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm a poet too. She's like, yeah, do you share your work? And I'm like, no. And she goes, you got to try Instagram. And I said, really? So thought about it for a few weeks. Then April 2019, I made my first post, and get your first post, you get a few likes and that, but I was happy to get any feedback. And it was so encouraging that, there were people that related, to these words that I was writing. So it was great to find that people were relating. So it kept me posting, and then more and more people kept, talking to me, engaging, and everyone was, for the most part, so nice, and it was just comforting. And so if I had that when I was younger, it might have been a lot more helpful. And I for a couple of years there during COVID, it was a little tough, so I didn't share as much, and was kind of dealing with things as a lot of people were. It was very traumatic, I think, for everybody. And but now I'm back, hopefully full time, better than ever.
No, I hear you on that. Yeah, it's funny too, because I remember when COVID first happened, it was insane, man. Like, I think that's when people started doing more lives. I noticed. And it's funny too because there was legitimately nothing to do. I remember, because I was doing security. I used to work in New York, and then now I work at retail. I'm an operations manager now, but it's interesting how was it been like 3 years now, I think, already, since the whole pandemic took place. And it's so crazy, right? Because
yeah,
I remember the shutdown. Like, I've never experienced that in my life. And I remember when they shut that down, I basically they told me, hey, we don't really have anything for you. You have to go home, and everything was shutting down. So a lot of people lost their jobs. And at that time, I was just getting into the poetry community, but it wasn't until after my father passed away that I just started posting, just like you, just posting just because. And I was like, I don't know where I could post poetry, because it's kind of hard because I don't know any websites. But I mean, other than what you just told me now, but like I didn't know where to go about publishing. And I said, let me just try Instagram, since I don't know where else to go. And it's so funny. The first time I knew about any community was it was Poets Anonymous. It was so weird. I was like, I got tagged something one day. I'm like, who's tagging me in this? And I thought it was one of those follow for follow BS. You know how sometimes on Instagram people follow for 1,000 followers. I'm just like, what the heck is all this? I saw these things, and then all of a sudden it's like Poets Anonymous. I'm like, oh, okay, they went live and they recorded me. Okay, cool. That was cool. And then I started following them. And then, sometimes when you click on something, then it's other ones that are just like that. And I think that around that time, that's when they started doing that whole relatable users or something like that. And that's basically how that whole community started. But like little by little, when COVID happened, again, the shutdown took place. I noticed a lot of people people were going live more than ever, because it was legitimately nothing to do. I know some places was worse than others, but it was just crazy, because I feel like that's when people's true colors came out, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I see that too.
and it was insane, especially in because I believe in God, I follow Jesus and stuff like that, and I around that time too, that's when a lot of pastors were kind of getting exposed to that was happening.
Hmm.
Uh, Carl Lentz, for one, that was one guy in particular that was very big. And then around that same time, that's when the George Floyd thing happened, and then it was just insane,
It was,
you know.
yes, it was very, very traumatic for society as a whole. And I don't know if we recognize that, sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's true, it's true. It's just, oh man, because I look back now, it's like, damn, that really was like legitimately, yeah, almost 2, 3 years ago already. It's just like, wow, and it's like, but I wonder, did that like has anything changed from that? Well, it's at least I don't know. That's how I feel sometimes. Like this is stuff I think about as well. And it's
Hmm. No, no, I get what you're saying. Like I was saying, looking back at some of my writings before in the late 90s, 2000, and then you have, 9/11, and then that was another thing that was a total shift of consciousness for this whole
yeah,
country. And my writing definitely was different after that. Everything was different after that. Television shows, all art, everything, all kinds of life was
yeah,
changed just like they were by COVID. And I think that was traumatic too for this, as a nation.
yes, it's
Obviously
crazy.
it was, but did we ever recover from that? I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder that too. And I remember 9/11 too. I remember I was in 10th grade. I was during global history class, and people were just talking about it. I'm like, wait, what? Who did what? And I think this is only when the first plane crashed, and then once the second
Yeah.
plane crashed, I was like, oh, okay, no, this is getting real here. What?
Yep.
It's
Yeah, it
just
was.
it's just crazy because it's like you said. It seems like every time there's a traumatic event that just comes out of nowhere, it just that's when people's perception of life starts to change. But I think my question is why. I guess you could answer this too. Like, why does it have to take a traumatic situation to happen just for people's perception of things to change?
It's a very good question. It's almost like, are we just too comfortable in our lives and, in our ways that we don't, and a lot of times we don't want to see things. And we know we got our own lives going on that are so engaging and our own problems that it's just too much to tackle these things. And we just don't want to accept them that's sometimes I think it could be that almost the denial.
Yeah, that's true. And I know denial could be very tricky too, man, because they'll tell us things that it'll comfort us, but then it's like when the reality smacks you, then it's a whole situation where it's like, damn, okay, so that's not what it was. Huh. Okay. So yeah, it's insane. I tell you, life is very, very interesting. And sometimes life teaches us things that we don't really expect to be taught, but then it's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you miss the lessons. A lot of it's timing. A lot of
Yeah,
it is
oh my
timing.
God, definitely timing. Oh, definitely timing, man. So I was gonna ask if there was a piece you wanted to read.
uh, sure. I can read the one I just posted a few weeks ago. I think got a lot of likes from people, so I'll read that one if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
Alrighty. This one is Man in Shadow by Edward Racey. I am the man in shadow, keeper of the night, not a transparent apparition, merely an illusion of sight, a phantom born of the moon, the suppression of its light. I am the man in shadow, an agent of doom, no stranger to superstition, draped in darkness and in gloom, a specter born into the unknown, the essence of death exhumed. I am the man in shadow, sleepless saint of insomniatic grief, not a mindless patron of faith, a tenacious crusader of belief. So if you care to offer up a prayer, send me a request for some relief. I am the man in shadow, for I never sleep.
Wow. Wow,
Thank
that's
you.
deep. That's
Thank
deep,
you.
bro. Wow. Wow, like how did
Appreciate it.
this one came out of the fly? Like this is so wow, man.
I took that picture of myself. I don't know if you've seen the post itself. There's a picture of my
Yeah.
shadow, and I took that picture, and then boom, that inspired the whole thing pretty much.
Wow, bro, that is impressive. And it's so crazy because I'm looking at it too right now on the computer as we're speaking. It's so interesting.
Hmm.
Like, wow. Like I love that. It has like a I don't want to say Halloween. It's more like a one of those movies, I guess, those scary movie theme to it. It's like I feel like I was like as you're reading it and I'm looking at the picture right now, like I feel like I'm visualizing like the whole, you know,
Hmm.
thing that the person is thinking about. It's crazy. And it's funny with shadow, because it's funny, shadows have a very interesting analogy as well. Like I'll give you an example. Like when, let's say, you're hanging out with somebody for a long time and you feel like you're under that person's shadow, like the person doesn't have a shadow but you are the shadow of that
Hmm.
person. And it could be very overwhelming sometimes, because I'm like, okay, hey, I'm here too, but it's like there's this guy. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's not a good example, but like, like that's
Right,
just. I guess
right,
it's
right.
something that.
Almost like there's just somebody just a little bit better than you, a little bigger than you, and you can't quite get out of their shadow. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. And it's so interesting how like just hearing your piece, it's like it brought me to that too, because like especially what it says, not a transparent apparition, merely illusion of sight, a phantom born in, I'm sorry, of the moon, the suppression of its light. Like that's very deep. Like that sentence right there, it's very,
Oh,
very deep. I have to say, I am the man in
thank you.
shadow. Like I love that, man. That is so awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was the picture, and I was standing there. The moon was behind me, and it just, those words just came. They like I looked at the picture later, and I just remembered standing there with the moon behind me and all that, and that's how the first
Wait,
verse was born.
so I
Stanza, I
was gonna
mean.
say, oh wow, and I was gonna say like the light, that whole light, that's the moon shining on you.
There might have been a light on too behind me, probably a light, but I do think it was. I'm pretty sure it was the night of that full moon, the eclipse type thing.
Ah, okay, okay,
So it was like
right,
a full
yes.
moon. So I can't remember if there might have been a light on, but either way, the picture looked cool.
Word. It's funny, like if you really like, let's say if I see it not zoomed up, but just like let's say when you see the grid, if you really look at the
Hmm.
picture, it looks like a person's face.
Oh, wow, I did not notice that. I'll have to check that out.
It's interesting. I'm looking at that like, whoa, like is that like a ghost from my past kind of thing? Like that's the way it's speaking well right now. Like I feel like that's a ghost of my past, and it's following me like a shadow to kind of taunt me, kind of thing. Like, hey, you'll never get over this. You'll never get over me. Ha ha. Like, and I'm always gonna shadow you no matter what, kind of thing. That's why that's kind of what.
Absolutely. No,
But
I,
it
I
could be
that's I,
too. Okay, well,
I like that.
no, no, go
That
ahead.
you got a different. Oh, sorry, I like that you totally got a different. Yeah, like perspective on it. Yeah, that I can see that too. It's a good analogy that you got.
Word. And I'm thinking that, but maybe I can be that shadow too. And maybe we don't know that we're that shadow for that person. And we don't know that how much that person might feel, or how uncomfortable that person might be going through some things, Because maybe we're the
Absolutely.
ones that's also the shadow of that person. It's interesting, so many levels we can take this piece in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna read a piece on my own, I guess. Something you wrote, and I just want you to see. I want you to tell me what this came from. It's funny because I was reading this earlier, and I really like this piece a lot.
Okay.
So the title of this piece, I believe, is called RSD, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, so here it goes. Release me from the voice inside and testified. This secrecy, lost frequency. Sever me from the curse within, my evil twin. Under blood moon, spirit immune. Detach me from the hell I know, this inferno burning alive. Demons survive. Bro, that is a very, very deep piece. And again, now it goes back to, because I'm the kind of guy, like when I read something, I like to dissect it, how it
Yes.
speaks to me. It is interesting. I feel like, especially like, how do I explain this? Where it's understood. So, like I said earlier, I do believe in God, and I do follow Jesus. Or at least I try my best to, follow his ways. And it's not an easy thing, but
Hmm.
it's like there's this whole like spirit versus flesh thing going on, if that makes sense. Like that's the way it spoke to me. And it's like sometimes your flesh wants to do something, but you know spiritually you shouldn't really do that. And it's like the voice inside your head tries to convince you, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, why are you making a big deal out of it? And then I'm crying out to God saying, Lord, detach me. This hell I'm going through right now, like I know this doesn't
Hmm.
honor you, or does it? See, biblically speaking, I know God, the Holy Spirit convicts you, not condemns you. Condemnation comes from the devil, obviously, but it's just like it's one of those things that when you're in that battle of war in your mind, it's like we don't know what the difference is, if that makes sense. And then
Absolutely. No, you don't.
what is anymore.
Hmm. Now, when you're in the battle, you can't see out sometimes, and yeah, you don't know which way is which. It's frightening. Um,
No, it is. It is.
yeah, that RSD. Let's see, the can't remember what the name was, but it's three quatrains. Eight syllables were in the first line, and four for in each additional line. So it kind of gave it a different kind of pacing than my normal stuff, which I'm trying to mix things up and try these different styles and different formats and forms of poetry now. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I liked it and it came out great, I thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually know, 'cause I'm looking at it too. As again, like every time, like I said, like as we're speaking, I'm also looking as well, and I love that. It's like I love the symbolism behind that, like just that picture alone, and then like just the words you use with that picture. As far as like to describe it, it's just it's very powerful. I have to say. And this one, you also came out the fly too, or this was like an experience. Like talk to me more about like the experiences you've gone through. Growing up and just even to this day.
Sure, sure. Well, the picture first, let me address the picture that was tagged. I was tagged by Maria La Poetess on Instagram, and so the picture, I looked at the picture too, and then I kind of just try to see how the picture kind of relates to me, and release me from the voice inside is about all the thoughts in my head, that the intrusive thoughts that I don't want, and how they just keep intensifying, and you can't tell anybody. It's the secrecy, um, and you lost communication because you can't tell anybody. Um, so that's kind of the section of that part of this one. Um, Now going back to like my early writing, what caused me to start writing was it was a very tumultuous childhood. Um, I was forced to grow up, I guess, early because of the reality and the abuse that I had seen and endured, and I was always kind of considered an old soul in that matter because I'd seen things that were beyond my years at a young age, and then they've left the mark on me to this day. Obviously, it's carried through. Um, Everybody's got different experiences growing up. So some have it worse, some have it better. But I knew my situation was a little different. But it was like it's all I knew. So to me, it was normal that my parents were never married. They never lived together. I was constantly going to different places, because my dad was he was very hands-on father and he was always there. And so I was going between families, back and forth, staying at aunts, uncles' houses. So I was in all kinds of different situations. So I kind of had to learn how to fit into all these situations, and at the same time maintain who I was at my roots.
Wow.
So that kind of, I think, helped me, grow up and with the experiences I had, because I was staying, lots of aunts and uncles, because my mom worked three jobs, my dad was working, even though they were never together. And I lived, excuse me, I lived with my mother. It was just, I was always being watched by somebody because they had things to do. And, it was interesting.
It is interesting. It's interesting you say what you said too. You said something about like basically everywhere you go, you had to fit in. But isn't it crazy where like in my case, I mean, my parents were always together, before my dad passed away, of course. But But even though, see, with me, it was more like, even though I had a parents, I had a brother and a sister, it felt like as if I didn't have one, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like I was saying earlier about like my upbringing, right? Because again, like a Hispanic culture, there's a lot of things that don't get addressed, that don't talk about, or it's one of those, oh, it just has to be understood. Like
Hmm.
it just, you have to just understand what we're talking about, and that's it. And for me, being the youngest, I had to deal with a lot of mental health stuff. I was diagnosed with
Hmm.
schizotypal personality disorder, which a lot of things were not really explained to me growing up. I just had to just put up with it and deal with it. That when, long story short, I basically rebelled against my dad and told my dad, I'm not going through this anymore. I'm not living on fixed income anymore. I don't
Hmm.
want to feel less human because you want to try to control, how my life goes, or just because you take something that probably wasn't that serious and made it more than what it was, and make me feel like I'm like the biggest scum in the earth. And I'm pretty sure, like I look back now, yeah, obviously I'm a father now, so it's one of those, especially my dad, because my dad was born like in the islands, Puerto Rican, like in
Hmm.
the islands, stuff like that. So like that kind of stuff was not something he really understood. So he just did the best he could. And a part of me, even growing up, like I understood that, but I didn't agree with that. And I
Hmm.
always felt like, well, you could have did this a certain way. Why didn't you just communicate with me whenever I asked you a question and you told me, don't ask questions, don't do this, don't do that. And now, to what you said about fitting in, to me, it's like everywhere I went, whether I was at school, whether I was at home, whether I was anywhere for that matter, it felt like I always had something to prove. I always felt like it was one of those, how do I explain that? Like it was one of those, like I had to just fit in everywhere I could. But the craziness about it is, once I broke out of all that, um basically the realities that I had to face, that no one really explained to me, I ended up having to go through on my own. That when I needed a brother, or when I needed a father, or when I needed someone to talk to, I didn't have anyone to talk to, where everything was just bottled inside. And I
Hmm.
became angry, I became very to myself. And if I was comfortable with you, okay, we can have a conversation. But my trust was very, very small, considering the fact that my entire life I always felt like if things happen bad in my house, then that means it has to be bad everywhere.
Hmm. Right, right. That makes total sense. And like I said, I was in so many different situations, and there was so many crazy things that I had, seen in some of the places I would stay. I'd seen places that were worse than mine, so it was kind of like, all right, mine isn't that bad. And then I'd seen, normal houses, and it's like, okay, well, is this how it's supposed to be? But your reality is only your reality. Like you said, like when you break out of that and see stuff that you've been sheltered or have not been able to communicate, it's alarming, and it can be alarming, but it also can be enlightening. So I guess you can look at it both ways.
Yeah. No matter, in my case, right? Like, no matter how hard I try to fit in, it didn't seem to work. And then when I finally fit in somewhere that looked comfortable to me, I still felt out of place.
Hmm. That's yeah. I think that's it's kind of normal too. And like you said, you had that chip on your shoulder. You always felt like you had something to prove. And I was an only child. Um, but that my parents weren't together. I think in a way I always was seeking both of their approval. We always seek our
Mm.
parents' approval, of course, but just the situation I had, it was, you know, and like you were saying, going back to, growing up and you weren't allowed to discuss things. And see, my mom was struggling too. And when you're a kid, you don't, especially back then, I didn't realize, what she was going through. And, I would go to AA meetings like 5 years old. I remember sitting in there hearing stories, crazy stories that people would, would be sharing. And it's just like, I didn't understand what she was going through, and I don't know that she did either. And she was very abusive to me, unfortunately, because of that what she was
Mm.
dealing with. And my dad, on the other hand, didn't really talk about the emotional stuff. It wasn't, he didn't understand. And one thing I do want to say is how proud of him I am is because he's grown over the years and he understands and he's always loved me for who I was, even though my condition sometimes limits who I am. And I just wanted to
Wow.
always say that. Appreciate him for taking the time to grow and understand is very important.
No, I definitely agree. It's interesting too because see, I never had the opportunity with my dad because there was always like a language barrier between us because he's Spanish, and
Mm,
my Spanish wasn't really that great. Now it's different, but like to try to explain to him how I felt was very difficult. And even when I got older, I guess that's why I felt like very resentful towards him for many, many years until I came to the Lord. And then little by little, I felt like God was taking me to a place where, okay, this is what it is, but I'm going to use it to your advantage type thing. And I was able to
right.
enjoy 5 years with him, even though um, when it came to simple stuff, yeah, we'll communicate. And then I remember one prayer I said, help me understand my father, I guess, was one prayer I said to God one time. And then during his last years, especially his last year that even before he even found that he had cancer and stuff like that, I don't know what it was. My cousin took me to like Planet Fitness, and we was just, oh, this is workout for me, whatever. They have the buddy system, and through
Mm,
there, I got inspired. I said, maybe I should work out. I don't want to always help my cousin. I said, let me get my own membership, zero down, $10 a month, get the buddy system. All right, cool.
right.
And I know my father liked to exercise just because. I said, hey, Dad, do you want to do this with me? I always go, because I used to work 10 to 6. So um, I always went after work. I said, hey, I'm going to do this on Wednesdays. Like every other day, basically, I did it, because I was kind of like, I just like to do it just to do it, to have something to do after work. But I didn't want to do it every day. I just want to do it every other day. And he will go with me, I think, every Wednesday. And Friday, he will go with me. And it was during those times that even I say, okay, we're walking to the Planet Fitness because it's kind of like 10 blocks from where we used to live.
Hmm.
And during those walks, when he would start opening up to me about his life, like I didn't ask him anything. It was just like, oh, my sister this, my brother this, and then same thing coming back from the workout, we're walking, and he's like, yeah, my sister this, or I did this at the hospital today or whatever, and I'm just like, okay, if this is the only way I can get to know my dad, then screw it. So I guess in that way, I think that's when I start to really understand my father better. Where okay, he didn't have the upbringing either.
Hmm.
I part of me felt like, but like I wish you could have like sat down with us. Like why? I'm thinking in my head, like why did it have to take for us to get older? Where it was like, okay, like I'm about to get married next year. I'm engaged, and it's just like, damn, I needed I was younger. And then he
Hmm.
died months I got married. So it was just like, okay, that doesn't help. Like, but
Right.
I enjoyed the 5 years that I had with him rather than like the 20 plus years that I was alive, I guess. Well, I'm 37 now, but you know what I mean.
All right. Well, no, that's great that you had those 5 years, and like you said, those 5 years should carry so much more weight than the 20 something whatever, years that weren't like you would have preferred. And like you said, it's hard to understand what people are going through, and he didn't know, and maybe he didn't know how to communicate with you either, obviously, and he seems to have grown too at that point, and was able to reach out, which is awesome. It's an awesome experience for you to have.
No,
I'm
no,
grateful.
well, exactly. To think back too, because like I was talking to a friend about just civilization today, how it's changed so much, and in some cases, yeah, it's changed for the better, but I feel like it's changed for the worse too because I feel like the newer generation that's coming out now, I just feel like they're I don't think they're really going to understand what we've been through, why we went through what we went. I don't think they're really ever going to understand, and to me, that kind of makes me sad sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, like we were saying, 9/11, how that was traumatic, and then the COVID, and younger kids won't remember the COVID as much as, teenagers and that, but, and who knows how they're going to react from it. But I think I'm guilty of spoiling my kids. And the reason I think I do is because it's almost like a guilt thing. And we had our chance almost like to leave this place a better place for them, and we didn't, even though it might not have been our fault, even though we were deceived, by so many different things. We've been through so many, tragedies in this country, and just wrongful deaths, and it's traumatic for a society. And I just think we feel, possibly feel guilty about why we've left everything.
No, of course. And I mean, to me, yeah, yeah. It's like you said, it's interesting, like again, like it's interesting how this life is just very. I don't know, man. I feel it's like a whole storytelling, Like one thing we're chilling, the next thing oh wait, what just happened here?
Right.
Like what's
Right.
going on, And it just happens in a way where, and I think it goes by a quote where it said, life could only be understood backwards, but we have to move forward.
Right. Right. I believe there's a Megadeth song with the lyrics somewhat similar to that. Yeah, life can only be lived in reverse. Only be lived forward, but understood in reverse. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That's a good quote.
Wow.
I don't know.
No,
I know I butchered it, but
no, I know what you mean. No, but I know what you were getting at. I get you. I get you. So I guess what I wanted to ask you was like how, so with basically the whole conversation we've had so far, how important is mental health for you, and how important is it for you to, like, let's say when you get older, we passed on and stuff like that, I guess leaving your mark, leaving some kind of lasting impact, to kind of like leave something behind after you, like how important is that for you?
oh, it's very, very important. Almost believe that's my calling in this life is to, educate others, relate to others on the experiences that I've had, and share what others have had, and just try to make somebody's day better. Excuse me. You know, somebody's life better. That's everything. Really, it's honestly why I'm still writing, because people say, "Hey, I feel you. I feel this. I know this pain. I know this experience." That's what keeps me sharing. I'll always keep writing, but honestly, that's what keeps me sharing this community, and the fact that other people are out there that can understand and relate. And it's because mental health, it's still an ongoing battle for me, and it always will be. I diagnosed depression, I think around age 20, but I know I'd had it since probably 13, 12 even. There was
Wow.
just one day, just something switched, changed in me. It was sudden, and I felt like almost the darkness come over me, and
Wow.
it's really never left. But I don't know. It was weird. It's a weird experience, but yeah,
But you know
it's
what's crazy too? Like the crazy thing about that, especially depression, because my sister, for a long time, I remember suffered with depression as well. And I think now it's to a point where even though, in some aspects she's in a better place, but now she has to take medication for it and stuff like that. And I remember I struggled with depression here and there. But it's not bad for me where I had to take medication. But when I was younger, I did, not anymore. But
mhm.
it's just crazy how it seems like just like cancer, depression does not care about
No.
anything or anyone, and when it comes, it just shows up and that's it. And I guess what gets me mad about that is like when other people, because there was someone I used to talk to on Instagram. I'll just keep her name anonymous, just respect for privacy and stuff.
Mhm.
But like people would get on her about depression and stuff like that, and I would have this conversation with her saying, well, depression is not something, it's not like a light switch. You can't just turn it on and turn it off whenever the fuck you want. Like And I think that's what gets me mad sometimes, that people have that mentality. And it's like, okay,
Hmm.
depression doesn't mean that you're sad. I mean, it's more than that. It's more severe stuff that is more severe than that, that we don't even understand ourselves. So for you to just tell someone to get over it, it's not that big of a deal, like that gets me mad, because you can't just not, you can't just turn it off whenever you want. It doesn't work like that.
Absolutely right. I, I used to get upset by that, people that would say that, but uh, I've learned, just got to tell yourself these people just don't understand. They don't have the experience. They've never, because it just doesn't help to get frustrated, but it is frustrating. It's just kind of like a dismissive way of addressing somebody's problems. Um, those are clearly the people that you don't want to confide in, because they
Yeah.
obviously just don't have the advice and wherewithal, the depth to give it. That's
Yeah. No, I hear you.
unfortunate. I mean, I'll tell people, if you reach out to somebody and they don't answer back, don't stop reaching out, because that just what meant that wasn't the person for you. You just, someone's there going to be there to listen. You just got to be strong enough to keep reaching out.
Yeah. Wow. That's actually pretty. You know what? You know what's funny? Because when I was younger and stuff, again, I'm getting into the world. I'm meeting friends here and there, or people who I thought were my friends. And it's true, like you said, like when we reach out to somebody, hey, you want to hang out, whatever, or hey, I just want to talk to somebody, and then they don't pick up, or they're not available. And one thing about me, I always had a bad habit of, I thought people were perceiving bad thoughts about me, kind of thing. So when they never picked up the phone, I'm like, okay, I probably did something wrong, or they just didn't want to be around me. And like, oh, why can't you just be honest with me? But then the problem with me, I think, is sometimes I would take the frustration out on the person, to the point that was not the case. I was like, oh crap, I messed up, and now we're not even friends anymore, kind of thing.
Right.
And to me, I like that was something I struggled with a lot, because if, let's say, the person didn't pick up the phone or didn't answer the text, I failed to realize that, like what you said, the fact is, hey, maybe that person just wasn't meant to be the person to reach out to. But that
Hmm.
was my problem. I used to stop. You're saying no, don't stop, just keep going.
Right.
And I think that's very
Absolutely.
important.
No, absolutely. Yep. Yep. Because I mean, there's people I've reached. It's from my experience, I've reached out to people, and like you said, you'll get different responses. Sometimes you just get ignored. Sometimes they say, "Oh, get over it." Sometimes they'll say, "You'll feel better tomorrow." Um, and I used to get upset by that, but now I realize, I said, these people they're not the person that's ready to handle this, and or just got to keep going, keep looking, because somebody there will be there to help.
No, definitely. But then I always wondered too, like me being like a spiritual person, I'm like, why, but God, why would you allow this to happen if we're supposed to, like, come to you, kind of thing? But why is it when I pray something, it doesn't go away? That I understand there's a process and a progress you have to go through, but it's like, did you create this? Like, what is this? I mean, I don't think I'm ever gonna get that question answered. But like, this is something I think
Yeah,
about sometimes.
right. That's no, I understand. It's yeah, I get that. My experience with religion was, my dad's family is Jewish. I was born and baptized Catholic. Then my mom actually married a Christian fellow man who was very abusive, you know, just very, very nasty, horrible man. And unfortunately, that kind of spoiled organized religion for me, and kind of spoiled, I do believe in higher power. I do believe, the story of Jesus. I don't know, how it all really, I don't, believe, not sure how it all relates and how it's been interpreted over the years. I think a lot of it's been, misinterpreted and changed. But unfortunately, yeah, I mean, as far as organized religion, that kind of ruined it for me. Um, Never been back to church really since. But
Wow.
like I said,
No,
I
and
do
I
believe,
get that.
I am very spiritual. I do believe in higher power, higher force. And I don't. Nobody has the answers. Let's be honest. There's so many questions I think we all want to know, and nobody has the answers, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's like, it sucks too about you said something very important. I think this doesn't get talked about a lot. Is the whole like the fact that it in your case it took one person and a situation that now it ruined it for you of anything possibly be like that. But I want to know what this is all about. Because I haven't been in church since 2020 because of the whole pandemic thing. And also because I
Hmm.
used to live in New York and now I live in Jersey. And it's like my main issue, especially with everything that's gone on in the last 3 years with these mega churches and stuff like that. To me, it's hard to just trust a place when people have gone through church hurt. Like that's something that's
Hmm.
very common that a lot of people do not talk about, unfortunately. And mental health definitely plays a role in that because when you're going through so much, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and you don't really understand it. And it's like to try to find the answers to certain things as to like, it's not really much of why, I guess much of what's going on or and how is this happening kind of thing is really what the question is. And
Hmm.
it sucks because I had friends that like they'll go to church once in the blue moon, but it's nothing crazy. But there's people who go church hopping because of church hurt. Like they don't go back to that one church and then it's like okay now I don't believe anymore or they just stop going all completely. And I think the main what people don't talk about is because I was always taught okay well who are we here for, man or for God, right? But
Hmm.
then the argument in fiction also be well even though you say that but what about like the person that hurt me? Okay, I'm gonna be uncomfortable now because
Hmm.
this person is in the same building as me, or a situation played out in this church in the same place as I am. And it's like, okay, but I'm gonna be very uncomfortable. It's gonna be hard for me to really praise you and worship you if I'm uncomfortable in this place. And I
Hmm.
think part of that people will understand is, the church is not just the four walls, it's really outside of that. But again, when something or someone ruins that opportunity for you, how are we supposed to, deal with that? How are we supposed to change the perspective of that? And I think that's what the thing that I like you said, a lot of people don't really talk about this thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes I do get like when people start telling me like, hey, you ever think about going to church and this and that, and hand me the flyer, and it's like I always go, do you want to sit down and hear my stories? I always think that in my head. I go, if you sat down and heard my stories, you would understand. But I respect everybody's beliefs. I mean, I don't have, like I said, I don't have any of the answers. I don't
No,
think
I
anyone
hear
really
you.
does. Um,
No, I hear you on that. But I think you said something very important that right there. And you just said the main key thing that you just said right now was this the whole listening part. I think that's what it is. We're so quick to be, hey, Jesus this or God this. But my question is, how about we just sit down and let me hear your story. I want to know what you've been through. I want to know what it really is. Like, okay, like yeah, I'll listen to you to what you have to say, but can you hear my story first too? You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what it is. I
Absolutely.
feel like if a lot of us just shut up more and listen more, I think something great could come out of that. And I think that's the problem also in religion that like we're so stuck on the belief system in that structural way that it's like we don't want to always hear anything. And I think if we just listen more and be quiet more, I think it will make a big difference in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You just you get both people. Some people just like to listen, some people like to talk, and some people can do both. And it's kind of, I think, goes back to that finding that person that you're gonna have that balance with. I mean, there's some people that I have relationships with where I let them, unload on me. I listen to everything they have to say. I don't share, they don't ask, I don't share back. And then there's other ones where I unload on people and they're there for me. And there's some where we, go both ways, give and take. And that it's important to have them all. I think all three of those in your life remains
Nice,
balanced.
man. No, of course. I feel you on that one, man.
It keeps you listening to people, then it keeps you talking, and then you'll have your people that you go both ways with and talk back and
No,
forth.
I definitely agree. Definitely agree with you on that. Okay, so that's very interesting. I definitely agree with you what you just said. So I think, we're gonna start putting this into a close. I would, if you want, I would like for you to read another piece, and we could talk about the piece as well.
Okay. Alrighty. Here's one I've never posted before. So this is a premiere, never been shared. It's called Emotional Vampires, A Pain in the Neck by Edward Racey. I was feeling weak and fatigued. I felt no love inside of me. A broken will left my soul diseased. An open wound forever meant to bleed. I was feeling low and ashamed. A wall of guilt built up inside of me. Poisoned mind left to take the blame. A severed heart made me an emotional amputee. I was feeling hopeless and defeated. Constant failure opened up a hole inside of me. A cycle of abuse endlessly repeated. Another love story ending up in tragedy. I gave up everything by always giving in to you. Finally, I realized the pain in my neck is from where you sunk your teeth into.
Wow, wow, that carries a lot of weight right there, man. Wow, wow,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
wow, whew, wow, that
I
carries a lot of
appreciate
weight.
it.
Now, was that like a particular thing or situation, or is that like a piece that just came out of the fly kind of thing? Like that's wow.
uh, Kind of based on reality in my life,
Okay.
situation in my life. It's actually a pretty emotional, close piece, but glad I got to share it.
No, no doubt. You should definitely post that one day, man. I think oh my God, that is such a powerful piece, man. Wow.
I will
I
do,
love
what,
that.
I'll do a double. I'll post it, promote it, say, hey, you want to hear this Red Live? You got to listen to Andy Morales. Jam them sessions.
Oh my God. No, thank you, bro. I appreciate that, man. But that's a definitely wow, man. That's very deep, man. I thank you for sharing that with me.
No,
And it's
appreciate
like
it. Thank
that
you.
way too. There's like that weight, I think is what's really that caught my attention was the weight of that because the whole pain in the neck thing, I feel like that's how a burden can feel like. It's such a pain in the neck that I can't keep my head straight no more. Now it's like
Hmm.
it's getting to a point where my head's going down and now it's bending my back kind of thing. That's the way that speech spoke to me. I feel like that's how burdens are. And it's like it's
Yeah,
hard when you have to carry that burden. And the worst part about it is when you have to carry a burden that wasn't even yours to begin with. Like that's the thing that sucks also.
right, right. And I do feel like I've carried multiple burdens. I mean, my mother, like I spoke to earlier, was, abusive, but I've always, as an only child, I've always protected her. And to this day, I'm still there for her. And I've learned to have boundaries. And that was the most important thing that saved our relationship. But yeah, it was important.
Wow.
Oh,
No, that's no, that's amazing, man. That's good that you were able to save that relationship, with your mom and stuff like that. That's there's a lot of people who don't even have the opportunity to do that. So the fact that you were able to do that, that to me is very inspiring. Like that's great, man. Because
right.
it's
And same
hard,
with you. Same with you and your
especially
father. You got that 5 years, and that's the most important, most beautiful thing.
yeah. Like you know what? I don't like how he died, but I understand why that had to happen that way. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like I get
Yes.
it now.
Yes. I'm sorry that it had to happen like that to you.
Nah, but you know what? I'm actually at peace though. Like, I thought I was gonna get emotional because I went to because my father got buried in Puerto Rico. So I finally went on my birthday weekend with my brother and my
Hmm.
mom. And I said, I haven't seen my father since I buried him. Let me actually go. And I actually felt okay. Like I thought I was gonna get emotional. I thought I was gonna really feel some type of way because I haven't visited him since then. And it's to like go there and it's like I'm actually okay. I didn't get sad. I'm like, you know what, Lord, I got you. Because if anything, I feel like that was my closure. Like I didn't have anything else to worry about anymore. I feel like that was the closure I needed because, like, you know what? I know he's in a better place. He's not. He's not suffering no more. He's not just being vulnerable anymore. And he's chilling. He's in the heavens. He's chilling. Like he's doing his thing. You know what? And I was actually okay with
Absolutely.
that. So, brother, Edward, thank you so much for being a guest here. I appreciate you. God bless you, man. And let's do this again soon, man.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. I'd love to do it again. Only love to all.
All right, no doubt, man. So, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for episode 3 of the Jam Sessions Live. Let's do this soon. Peace.